I'd like to invite onto the stage the moderator for our next session, Major General Nitin Gadkari, who we met earlier with Baba Kalyani. Please give him a big round of applause. And joining him today is Rajiv Chaudhury, former Strategy Director of BAE Systems. Can I invite him onto the stage? Please give him a big round of applause. He's a practitioner of defense industrial strategy who's led policy and industry engagements with government and also participated in India-UK and India-US Track 1.5 dialogues. We also have with us today, and I'd like to invite onto the stage, J.D. Patil, President INAE, with nearly 5 decades at L&T, including board-level leadership across defense, aerospace, and new age smart technology. He set up 4 greenfield defense production complexes and has overseen multiple major defense and aerospace units that help make L&T one of the largest private sector defense companies in India. I'd like to also invite onto the stage Abhijeet Bokil, MD and CTO of Aeron Systems. Can we give him a big round of applause? Co-founder of Pune-based Aeron Systems with 2 decades in resilient navigation, sensor fusion, and avionics. And finally, I would like to invite onto the stage Jonathan Aeron, CMD and Country Head, India, of Israel Aerospace Private Limited. With 20 years of experience across defense and aerospace, leading programs and international customer engagements. Major Nitin, it's over to you for this session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2 reasons I'm standing here. One is the gestation period after lunch actually starts now. And secondly, if I sit, I'll get slower. As it is, I think we lost 10 minutes of our time. So standing, I can make up a little bit of it, if not all of it. So I welcome the panel to this session, which is on technology for manufacture and building capacities. So when I studied the sub-theme, I realized there are 2 parts to the sub-theme. The first part is the technology part. And you will be wondering how the last session and this session is going to be any different. But trust me, it's going to be quite different. And the second part is building capacities, which I think is all about manufacturing capabilities in the country. So I'm going to analyze the second first and then get on to the first one. The way we are going to go about doing this is, allow me about 8 minutes of introduction. Thereafter, each one of you don't have to stand from your own place, gives something about your company and what product you are doing and yourself. After which, there will be a question-answer session by the chair, and hopefully there will be some time later at the end of it for audience to ask a few more questions. So talking about the building capacities. If I quote to you simply in terms of finances, as far as the defense production numbers are concerned, the criticality will very obviously come to fore. So India's GDP as taken in the last union budget, 26-27, was 3 crores 93 lakhs and 393 crores. And the defense budget was 7 lakhs 85,000 crores, 2.5% of our GDP. Out of which, the capital budget, which is we call the modernization budget, was 2 lakh 19,000, which is almost 28%, which is the highest this time of the union budget. Our total domestic production of defense domestic production the last year before the budget, was 1 lakh 54,000. So if you had a capital budget of 2 lakh 19, obviously there is a gap. This gap is around 65,000 crores. We have no choice but to import this gap. Now, going by the latest GOI figures as to how much was the defense production that was asked for in the same year, it was 1,82,000, out of which 1,20,000 was domestic, indigenous, given what the finance minister had announced in the budget, 75%. It didn't cross there, it came to about 67%, which left 62,000 crores for capital, which was obviously had to be either provided by us or outside. In fact, this 62,000 did not meet the capacity that we have, so part of it came from outside. Now, this is the problem that we are facing, that we have a demand, but the demand is far more than the capacity that we can produce in. Apart from that, 2 deals of Rafale cost us 67,000 crores for the first Rafale, and second, the Rafale Marine cost us almost 64,000 crores, which has gone into committed liabilities, and every year these committed liabilities keep going forward more and more. And why? Because own defense production is unable to produce the requirement of the armed forces. Now, giving an example, Marshal Bokil is here, given an example of Tejas Mark I. Tejas Mark I, which was contracted a few years back, has yet not entered Indian Air Force in service. 5 of them are ready, I believe, but they're awaiting some engine delays, which they call as the last-minute delays. So when it comes to building capacities or capabilities, India has some distance to travel. Now, the second part of the sub-theme was technology. That story is a little more sweeter. But as we all know, and it has been stated in the last session also, technology shapes the nature of warfare, and a lot has been said about Ukraine, Gaza, and Op Sindoor, and I'm going to skip that, except that the small little anecdote about BrahMos. BrahMos is the one which really played havoc with the enemy, and there is a small anecdote attached to it, which was doing the rounds of the internet. Dr. Sivithanu Pillai, who is the father of BrahMos in India, of course, it's a collaboration, he was on a selling mission of BrahMos to Dubai, as he says, and there was a Pakistani delegation wanted to see him. The Pakistani general asked him, Mr. Pillai, what is the cost? And he goes on to say, for you, sir, it's going to come free. We have done exceedingly well in defending our territory in Op Sindoor, all thanks to all the indigenous production which we had, especially our air defense, which was based on the AICCS, the Integrated Air Command and Control System. A mention has been made about Bhushan Gokhale, also Air Marshal Bhushan Gokhale, and it is because of that that most of our airfield, air bases, infrastructure, civilians areas were all safe from enemy and air bombing. Now, picking up on a beautiful message that was left yesterday by Dr. Krishna Ella, that was about innovation, I wish to narrate a story, and the story is important here. It is befitting and important. The story begins on 9th of December 1971. On a stormy, dark night at sea, 2 Indian naval ships were hunting for a Pakistani submarine off the coast of Kathiawar in Gujarat. The Pakistani naval submarine was operating to avenge the attack on Karachi harbor. Sitting in the sonar room, and sonar is for sound navigation and ranging, of one of the ships, INS Kukri, was a young subaltern Lieutenant Jain, who a few months back or a year back had developed a new sonar, a retrofit sonar of a UK model 170B. He was very confident of its abilities, but we all know what happened, the poor state Kukri met with, probably because of the same submarine which it was hunting, PNS Hangur. Shaken by this loss, Naval Headquarters summoned another young naval officer, Lieutenant Paul Raj, who at that point in time was pursuing PhD from IIT Delhi in signal estimation theory, a subject related to sonar. Lieutenant Paul Raj had earlier voiced his opinion against the retrofit model of 17B. That is because he said it's an upgraded version of the British model, and hence he was not in favor of it. The Indian Navy puts its faith in Lieutenant Paul Raj to build an entirely new sonar based on his thesis. Paul Raj, in less than 2 years' time, redesigned Model 170B on the signal estimation theory, sea-tried it, and proved that his performance was better than what the BARC and Lieutenant Jain had produced. But that got introduced for the timing in the Navy. But not to be content and egged by his success, Paul Raj and his team took on the task of designing a completely indigenous sonar, which was named as APSO, Advanced Panoramic Hull Mounted. APSO is the acronym. The leap of faith by Indian Navy and the Government of India in 1976 occurred in an era of complete sanctions due to the 1974 nuclear blast, which has been mentioned in the last session here. At that point in time, export of high-tech components and technology were banned by the US and Western nations to India. Struggling amidst the stringent conditions with a meager budget of 280 lakhs, Lieutenant Paul Raj and his team in 1982 built a sonar that could detect a ship up to a range of 16 kilometers, a feat unheard till that day. APSO cleared the sea trials with flying colors and entered service. It remained the best sonar with the Indian Navy has ever had. It is in service even today with its new variants. Lieutenant Paul Raj's journey was strewn with most difficult technological challenges, yet through power of knowledge, innovation and perseverance, his team surmounted every problem and produced the best sonar Indian Navy has ever had. The source code and the designs are yet a secret because many nations have tried to procure this sonar. This long story actually carries a message that we are trying to echo today, and that is innovation is key to Atmanirbharta. If Paul Raj and his team could do it then, inventing and innovating the best technology which stood the test of time, this generation can do it better. As I have laid in front of you both sides of the sub-themes, we are going to debate these two aspects with a very eminent panel that we have. Each one of them have done proud to their nation and their companies in defense manufacture. I'm going to say the names in terms that I have listed, may not be the way they are sitting. Mr. Rajiv Raj Chaudhury was with the BAE system. Mr. J.D. Patil, a name and face known to everybody almost. Mr. Abhijeet Bokil of Aeron, and Mr. Aeron from Israel, and he's going to be treated to some special treatment by me when it comes to question and answer session. And let me first call upon Rajiv Raj Chaudhury. Please take your time, 5 to 8 minutes, to introduce yourself and your company. Thank you. You don't have to come here.
Great. Thanks, General. And it's great to be here, and thank you, Ambassador Bambawale. I'm going to start basically about talking through the new defense acquisition policy that even Dr. Kalyani referred to, and especially in the context of certain trends and signals that I see in terms of defining and building indigenous platforms. So the first is around foreign FDI, foreign direct investment, and the MOD has for many years been looking at FDI as a mechanism for bringing in technology from outside the country. Now, in 2016, the FDI under automatic approval was moved up from 26% to 49%. And then in 2020, it was moved up again from 49% to 74%. At 74%, this was the first time that foreign defense OEMs actually had control and ownership of their subsidiaries in India. And the expectation was that this would bring in a huge amount of FDI and also would bring in foreign OEMs setting up multiple subsidiaries and therefore bringing in foreign technologies into India. But none of this happened. The expectation this time, ahead of the draft defense acquisition procedure, was that FDI in specific critical areas of technology would be raised from 74% to 100%. But this has not happened. So at the first level, clearly, the first mechanism that the MOD has in terms of looking at bringing in foreign technology, that no longer seems to be working. The second change in terms of policy is the ask of foreign defense OEMs to be treated as Indian companies when they have set up 100% or 74%, which they can do now, 74% JVs in India. The expectation was, again, that this would happen, and the ask of the foreign OEMs was very clear, because by being able to be on par with domestic companies, they would be able to qualify for the most preferred MOD capital procurement category along with domestic companies. And the definition of companies eligible to participate was essentially Indian owned and controlled with an FDI of 49% maximum. This again has not happened. So two trends where the government seems very clearly to be suggesting that the old legacy models of bringing FDI into the country is not something that they want to be running with. The third part is around defense offsets. For 20 years, defense offsets have been part of the defense ecosystem. And this has been essentially effective to bring Indian companies and set up a basic industrial base in defense in India. But it has not brought in any meaningful technologies. This defense policy, for the first time, remains silent on defense offsets. Having said that, there was an indication that this could happen because over the last few years, the MOD has been diluting the offset mechanism. In 2016, it increased the threshold for offsets 7 times. And of course, in 2020, it exempted G2G and single vendor contracts from offsets. The fourth shift, I would say, is indigenous content IC as the new offset. For the first time again, direct global buys, direct imports from foreign defense OEMs will now require to have an Indian content of 30%. It's still early days as to how that's going to happen, but clearly the focus on indigenization and localization is something that's coming through very clearly. In practice, this has already been happening. If you go back last couple of years and look at specific government-to-government deals in relation to, for example, General Atomics for the Predator drones, and Dassault in terms of the Rafale Marine contracts. They have all, without qualifying it clearly, but they have all demanded or required a localization. So General Atomics is setting up an assembly plant for the drones, and Rafale, of course, is looking at an MRO and fuselage manufacturing. Dassault is looking at fuselage manufacturing for the Rafales. I would go on to say the fifth bit is clearly a deeper commitment to indigenization. I see indigenous content has been periodically being raised every year. This year, it's been moved from 50% to 60%. And this is across all the Made in India programs. So again, clearly from the perspective of foreign defense OEMs, a sense that the focus is shifting. The sixth point is there is a move away from Made in India programs. Now, legacy transfer of technology programs, what we call Make in India programs, they transferred manufacturing technologies, as we all know, but not design technologies. So, for example, HAL can assemble the Su-30, but it can't build the next generation Su-30. Similarly, when Tatas have partnered with Airbus to make the C295 in India, Tatas do not have access to the black box, and therefore they cannot upgrade or modify the platform. DAP 2026 seeks to reduce these redundancies by moving away from made in India to the concept of owned in India. What owned in India is all about is that the focus being Indian IP, indigenization, and collaboration. And this could be across Indian-owned and controlled entities, so once again, where FDI is less than 49%, or it could also be in relation to G2G programs where you have a committed 100% transfer of technology, you have 100% IP ownership, you have 60% IC, and you have 0% export control restrictions. To end, I would just want to leave you with two thoughts. I mean, we talked about indigenization, IC, the focus that the MOD has in terms of indigenous technologies. The first is IC alone as a measure of indigenous capabilities may not be enough. You could have 50-60% IC, but if you don't have factors like configuration control and weapons integration, etc., then there is not very much that you can do on the platform. And the second is, well, is even IC the right measure of indigenous manufacturing? There is a view that strategic control of key technologies may matter more than IC. So as long as the non-critical materials are available in India, then why not critical technologies and why only IC? There is a program the government of India has, which is under its most preferred acquisition policy, which is the Make One projects. And unfortunately, this project, the Make One projects have not really gone anywhere. Although this is really the one category where you are looking at indigenous platforms and developing prototypes for these indigenous platforms. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm sure General will come back at a later stage.
Yeah, Mr. Patil, if you can.
I think when we talk of anything in being done in India, we need to see it in a different perspective. As far as Lacedet Tubro is concerned, we were in defense in British India. There are 3 companies in India that happen to be doing a lot of defense stuff besides the ordnance factories. Now, all of a sudden, post-independence, all of us were not required. This is a scenario which dramatically changed when Navy started facing enormous embargoes after 74. I don't need to say what happened in 74. But this is the era when navies truly started indigenizing, and enormous amount of indigenization started happening. So anyone who was prepared to do, call it initially, it's fine to have a collaboration for 1 program, 2 program, but do your own design and development. We realized in those days that this is going to be the biggest kind of a game changer in times to come. So 9 verticals of defense that Lacedet Tubro developed, in all of them, right from that day, we decided we are not going to be dependent on any foreign company, but start doing basic technology and design and development right here in-house. Now, this is essentially where the era of Kalam, when he moved out of ISRO, India's first rocket that flew, SLV-3, was a 3rd configuration of an SLV done entirely in India, done by L&T for Kalam. Now, when Kalam moved into DRDL, and we actually have seen the IGMDP, and as a result, anything on the absolute high-tech end truly then started happening right in India, and the whole ecosystem that we see of about 14,000 defense industry people And this is essentially where in many forums I keep hearing, India still needs to build a capacity. I keep on saying that India only needs to change the policy. Capacity exists, and the capacity government does not utilize, and it's underutilized, very, very grossly underutilized. Now, this is a kind of a cliche when we talk of the moment we remain foreign dependent, there's always going to be a gap with respect to what we can produce, because it's someone who chooses what I can give to you and not what we actually want. And I think exceptionally good things happen in the world. The wars are bad word in that sense, but 2022, the world started recognizing that if you are not having your own truly ability to sustain a war, because fighting a 2-week, 3-week war is fine, but when you fight it for 3 years and 4 years, you need that sustenance, and at that sustenance you start realizing you can't be dependent on anybody. Now, the moment you are now going to be on your own, if you didn't have your own autonomy, you're going to be a sitting duck, and that's what we keep seeing, what's happening in the world today. Now, the step ahead, when we talk of that complete autonomy, is where you start doing complete design development. And take an example, since you talked of, speak a little about your own companies. The company that we built started doing everything design and development. We deliver anything and everything ahead of schedule. So this is something which never happened in India. There's no public sector undertaking who ever did it, but Larsen & Toubro somehow does it. We design and build warships, we design and build submarines, and the most confidential program of this country that began in mid-80s, Larsen & Toubro was deeply involved, and we build whatever it takes. Now, unfortunately, some of these examples are in excess of 90% indigenous content. Where do they get spoken? Why are we dependent on anybody? If we decide we don't have to be dependent, we actually will be Atmanirbhar on that point in time. And this is essentially when I start looking back in terms of this history, some of those decisions of everybody in the world actually saying, I'll not give you technology, is the one that made the biggest difference for India, because 74 onwards, India started becoming Atmanirbhar in that sense. Strategic defense, if you look at as a result from 74 onwards, strategic defense, we have zero dependence on anybody else. It is only the commerce aspect of the defense, in that sense, the tactical side of battle. On tactical battle, we kept on choosing to import. Can you beat it that till 2003, you don't even have a category, anything other than buy global in your acquisition category? The only category that existed when DPP became public, and Vijay Kelkar is part of this forum, right in PIC, it was his committee, post, of course, K. Subramaniam committee and things like, which actually said bring in private sector. Whole lot of us entered, in a way, defense sector in the new avatar, leave about the British period, but in the 80s. Now, what we were doing right up to 2002 when the licensing began, we were all doing R&D. R&D was allowed to be done, and production was debarred to be done. None of us could produce one nut and bolt. Components you could do for DRDO and you could give it as a prototype, but you couldn't produce serially. And this is essentially where India has remained to some extent quite dramatically behind. And same scenario when we look at strategic defense. Again, I don't need to say strategic defense underwater, on surface, on land, or wherever it is. Follow it right up to aerospace in the form of ISRO. Tell me what is the capability that India doesn't have. So it's a question of always looking at whether we are looking at half full, we are looking at half empty. And if you're looking at that half full, then there's so much that can actually be done in terms of building that capability. One part we missed out as a country, and maybe 2-3 more. The chip is what we missed out. I was so happy that previous session, the chip was talked about, SCL was burnt off. It was bombed off. It was not burnt off by an accident. I mean, everyone knows the reason is we were among the 2 countries in the world at that time talking about semiconductors when Silicon Valley came into existence. Now, after that, it's the government policy which said we will not have another. Why did we do that? Today, of course, government wants to put in 90,000 crores in the second and third tranche now into semiconductor. It's a great wisdom coming too late. But anyway, कहते हैं ना कि देर से आए दुरुस्त आए. Here onwards, when we start doing with the GAN kind of a facilities of SSPL, which all of us are aware, I also incubated, as last part of what I did for Lassen Dubro, is to incubate a semiconductor company. So it exists. So it's not something one is talking of. Right from the basic chip level, India can do. Idea is whether we are allowed to, whether your part, you then talked about HL Mark 1 hasn't gone in. Let me ask you why. Was there ever a competition in this field? Tell me any other domain in defense where there was competition. The PSUs are performing better. The private sector is also there and performing better. When we started talking, we deliver warships ahead of schedule. Every PSU started talking, they deliver warships on time. Now this is what competition does. In aerospace, unfortunately, never ever a program has been allowed. The first we are talking is AMCA. And if AMCA happens, which is at whatever CCS level now, if CCS decision making tilts, and which the indications show they will tilt towards the private sector, history would be rewritten. And that's exactly what the country looks at. Well, we are not looking at something which, as private sector, somebody need to give it to us on platter, but if we all wanting to play our role, we should be allowed to play that role. And this is one aspect of the policy side. I still see enormous gaps. When government thinks of it, they still think government owned, in spite of efficiency, whether good, bad, I would not speak. In spite of whatever their efficiencies are, government thinks we can trust them. Private makes money. Whom do we make money for? We make money for the shareholder. In most Indian large companies, the largest shareholder is Government of India. The largest share of revenue goes back in the form of taxes to Government of India. So what are we talking about? So this is essentially where, when I start looking back, whether India has capacity, I think it's a wrong question. Whether India is allowed to use its capacity is far more relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Patil. Mr. Abhijeet Bokil, I'll request you to give something about what does your company Aeron system do. We'll come to INS in a question and answer session.
Sure. So in many ways, I think Aeron, my company, started out of the same necessity. I think 18 years ago, when probably in 2006-07, when we were working for Indian Navy, and we saw that the most basic things, to give an example, there was a memory bank the size of that table. The size was some kilobytes. And they were not able to repair it. And I mean, looking at that, we thought that, obviously India cannot be held at ransom to, to repair something like that. And we started working in this technology called resilient PNT, which I'll come to later. But we realized that even this technology, post-1990s, this was a technology that was embargoed. And Dr. Kalam, in fact, set up a DRDO lab to research this technology, primarily for missile programs. But all of the other platforms, whether aircraft or naval vessels or anything else, systems continue to be imported. A large part of that continues to happen now, but we have been able to successfully do it for a huge bunch of platforms. And just to add, because I heard Mr. Chaudhury also and Dr. Patil also speak, I would say that as an MSME, though capability exists within the ecosystem, capability exists within, especially on a system level. India is already good at systems. I'm sure that we can make AMCA. I have no doubt about it. But when it comes to basic technologies, or especially manufacturing processes or manufacturing technologies, and I'm sure L&T has access to that, but if we talk about MSMEs who are developing LRUs or specific products, they don't have access to a lot of the manufacturing technologies, though DRDO has started giving away some of the TOTs, but there is this session also gave me the opportunity to do my research over the last 1 week. And I was using Claude, by the way, to also do research. And it gave me, there's a very different tone, the way Claude talks versus ChatGPT talks. And Claude said that no amount of system level development is going to paper over the incapabilities that exist in manufacturing in the Indian ecosystem. So there is a lot, some 50 odd key critical things, manufacturing technologies, even semiconductors. It's great that we are doing it, but whether aerospace or defense semiconductors are going to be made and by when, and when will they be available to the masses? Because the first thing that you will do is to target laptops and data centers and all of that. We're talking about nanometer, but we as Aeron, and I'm sure a whole lot of the MSME companies, even large PSUs and large defense private OEMs, they don't necessarily need NVIDIAs. Most of the chips that they actually require are analog to digital converters. I'm not sure by when. And then that vulnerability still exists by which, and it took somebody, putting tariffs on somebody else to realize that we can be denied. So even if we have chips, the manufacturing process is, the earlier session talked about GaN, but there's some, metal, organic, chemical vapor deposition is something that does not exist in India. So there's so much of it. Again, we will have semiconductors, but I think the next thing to work on is photonics. Photonics is the next semiconductor, so we should already be thinking about that. So,
okay.
In just the last line, that we work in resilient PNT technologies. GPS can be jammed and spoofed, and we work in technologies that can avoid doing that. So I'll come to that.
Thank you, Abhijeet. Thank you. Coming to Jonathan, he is currently the CMD and country head of Israeli Aerospace Private Limited in India. So give you 5 minutes to say something about you, your company, and then I'll take on that question which I prompted before we came here. Yeah.
Thank you, General. Thank you for having me, Ambassador, and a special thanks for the Indian ambassador in Israel who advised me on joining this panel. IAI in India has been working for the last 25, 30 years, collaborating with multiple establishment companies through different type of cooperation and competitions. Typical competition, which is quite, I would say, common to the defense sector. We have been trying to adopt, I'll put it humbly, towards the requirement, the changing requirement of the DAP for the last 20-something years. And the vector is very clear, okay? Makes a lot of sense. I mean, both of our nations were formed out of an eruption, and each nation kind of took its way with the challenges of a new nation and with the embargoes that both countries have experienced. So there are so many similarities which actually make Israel and India, it's a cliche, yeah, it's a twin countries. I mean, we are the small twin, yeah? So, twin countries. And I think that on the DAP, there are, it's clear, make in India and owned by India. So how do you make the owned by India? Okay. Either you bring in government funds, or industry is bringing its own funds and doing and developing by its own, or you try to absorb technology to the best level you can, or there's another alternative that I will touch base with it in a second. But if I'm looking at numbers that Dr. Kamat has mentioned in one of the lectures I've seen him speaking, 0.64% of the GDP is in R&D only, compared to any other, I don't like the term Western, Israel is investing 2.5 to 5% of GDP in R&D. This is almost 7 times compared, of course, I mean, big, small. And you ask yourself, if this is the case, why does it happen? Okay? Is it that the industry in India does not believe that it can do it? I'm just keeping question open. Okay, I don't have an answer for it because there are organizations like Larsen, which is an engineering-based organization which has done, wow, dramatic things over the years, and they are deeply rooted within the defense. The Tatas, Adanis, they are trying to do in a different venue. But it is extremely difficult to come into mature systems when there are alternatives outside. So I'm looking at the fourth alternative. For distinct partners who have been supporting each other, and we have had the visit of Prime Minister Modi last week. I mean, for me, of course, I'm running here since 2006, 2007. This is really, I mean, I felt overwhelmed with the visit. But there is a true partnership and true collaboration between the countries. The Director General of the Ministry of Defense is coming next week, on the 9th, in order to discuss joint resilience. How can both countries, which are allies and so strongly coupled, can work together in order to generate strategic collaboration between the nations, both in terms of inventories, but far more than this. So this boils down to maybe a fourth alternative, to an alternative in which, again, distinct partners will be allowed to have 100% FDI companies here in India. This will become a fully owned subsidiary, but 100% Indian companies operating under the Indian supervision of the Ministry of Defense. These companies, as there is a provision for that in the current DAP 2026, can buy IP from their mother companies and make it Indian. And then you generate an ecosystem around this company, which eventually will grow up and will mature the industry. Now, by no means there is any intention to jeopardize any existing. This is a long run, forward-looking, to generate, yes, and I'm not trying to be, we are looking at it from business perspective, like Mr. Patil mentioned. But we believe that this is a good route that can benefit us, can benefit India, can benefit Israel to join the true joint resilience.
I'll take you up from that. 2 things I want to ask. One, the hype about Mr. Modi's visit. How does Israel look at it? And second, now you just mentioned, how difficult is it for a company in Israel or a DPSU to share the core technologies in terms of the IP that you've spoken just now and Mr. Rajiv Roy Chaudhury has said? So how difficult is it possible? Has it been happening with anyone else?
Could you repeat the first question about Prime Minister Modi?
Modi. No, I said, what's the hype about it in Israel? And so we are very excited.
I mean, as I've mentioned, for me it was really a heart-warming moment. But Israel and India are allies. Okay, this kind of visits, I mean, the fact that Mr. Modi stand out with Israel after the events in Gaza, and I believe that we have furnished our support before, during, and after the Sindor operation. This only shows how strong the ties are between our two nations. And I don't think there's too much to elaborate on this.
Okay.
It goes without saying.
Okay,
India and us are like brothers.
Okay.
And look, we've discussed this briefly before. Technology for a company is like a bachi bacho. Okay, it grows, it becomes larky larka. Okay, what do? I mean, you're expecting, maybe you're not expecting, you're maybe wishing that, okay, take my girls, I have 3 girls. Take care of them. No, seriously. I think that the approach should be different, okay? Look what the US are doing, okay? First of all, the US are allowing the 4th model that I've discussed before, okay? But the industry there is very strong, so there is a difference in... Nevertheless, the US industry and the military is pushing very hard toward MOSA, Modular Open System Architecture, which actually decouples the vendor from the service. It allows the services the freedom of defining and making changes within systems which are available. And in a sense, if you think about it, let's assume that you buy a MOSA-based architecture or MOSA-based solution, you can then adopt it by yourself. And this is a critical phase, okay? And I think that this needs to be further, I would say, looked into.
Okay, Mr. Rajiv, so in fact, just taking forward from what he said, and your point about make in India versus own by India. So the point that he has made, is that exactly the point that we want to make? And the current DP, the new DPP, it's likely to have some clause like that. Will it make a difference, or will there be some difference of opinion in this?
No, I think what Aeron alluded to clearly is around operating models. And from an India standpoint, the operating model that we've seen so far around made in India or make in India, the expectation was that you would have technology coming in and platforms being made. But clearly we also need to recognize that gold box technologies is not something that's going to come into India. So therefore, the government is now moving out from there and getting into owned by India. Again, go back to the operating models around what owned by India means. You could look at it in multiple ways. I mean, there is the basic model which says, well, it has to be an Indian owned and controlled company which must have the IP ownership, etc., etc. But what we're also seeing is another model, which is a G2G framework and foreign defense companies collaborating with India on critical technology. So, for example, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh has made the announcement that Safran is in collaboration with DRDO and GTRE for the AMCA aero engines. Now, we are looking at 100% technology transfer. We are looking at 100% IP ownership in India. We're looking at, as I mentioned, a 60% IC and a 0% export restriction. That's a model that fits within the current construct, but is a made in India model. So the point being that we need to start exploring multiple operating models within the made in India. For example, I alluded to the make policy. The make policy is, as I said, is part of the MOD's most favored or preferred procurement category. And that essentially calls out for identified technologies and for development of those technologies. Now, under the make projects and the make one list, you have products that rely on foreign collaboration. But till today, there is not a single foreign defense OEM that has actually come in and participated in a Make One. The reason being that the construct around a Make One, again, is very focused, for reasons that we all understand, on the India bit. Indian, for FDI maximum 49%, and IP to be owned by India. Now, in terms of the foreign collaboration, look at it this way. Foreign OEMs, many times, obviously are not going to be selling IP, and Make One requires the Indian partner to buy the IP. But they're not selling for one of two reasons. Sometimes they're unwilling to sell, but sometimes they're unable to sell because the IP is not sitting with the foreign defense OEM, it's sitting with the host country. So, I think there needs to be this rethink about operating models and how do we bridge that gap between, the focus and pressure, on Indian owned and controlled, whereas a lot of that technology is sitting outside. And why do we want to, reinvent the wheel and spend billions on it? So I think that's really where it is.
Thank you, thank you. I have a question for Abhijeet. Abhijeet, in fact, taking up from there, what's the difference between Honeywell and Safran in transfers of technology to India? You have mentioned that somewhere in your paper. When it comes to a company like Aeron in India, what's the difference in transference of technology between these two companies? So, and in light of INS, if you can, update us on that.
Sure. So, as I was saying earlier, inertial navigation is a technology which basically works in absence of GPS, and this is something that has existed before GPS. So it's existed since World War. However, we have not. It has taken significant amount of time for us to do it here. Even now, DPSUs do have transfer of technology from the likes of Safran to manufacture INS in India, but they continue to face struggles because of life cycle issues. For example, when things become obsolete and they need ultimately they are really not in control of their own outcomes or their own programs, because we know in India, especially aircraft programs or any of these programs are 30, 40 years. And naturally, the OEM will not support that kind of life. They will, technology will get obsolete and then they will have to upgrade, which will be significant cost for them. The other thing is that in inertial navigation itself, there are a couple of key parameters. One is, the main thing is the software that is the sensor fusion algorithms that go and become part of the INS, which we need to know what they are doing. And we need that kind of sovereign control in terms of what the guidance system does. Because when GPS is denied, and we have seen this in all of the recent wars, whether Op Sindoor or Ukraine or everywhere, we have seen that GPS is the first thing that gets jammed, spoofed, the moment war starts. And so we don't want a certain missile to be fired in a certain direction, but come back, in your own territory. So we need to have control over our own guidance algorithms. That's the most important piece. The second is the aggregates. For example, the sensor technologies that go into the inertial navigation system. And Aeron has its own sensor development program to have control over all of these aggregates. So I think that is most essential, and that applies to other technologies as well. But principally to have domestic control over that. And just to add to what Nitin was saying, that it's not about the foreign OEM as well. We collaborate with a lot of, in fact, we have nearly as many touch points in maybe Israel and Europe as we do in India. in terms of business relationships. It's not that, but to have that kind of assurance that we will not face that. And that is what we require in terms of.
Yeah. So we'll have 10 minutes for the audience. But before that, I want to go to Mr. Patil. And I'm very keen to know, how did L&T reach that magical figure of 98% self-indigenous, what should I say, technology by themselves? How did you reach that figure? And that was so early.
I tell you, what I said earlier, if you start designing on your own, you have a choice of what to use in your design. And if you have that choice, you can actually make far higher indigenous content. And some of the mega programs of this country is a testimony to that we actually don't import. Now, scenario is, it's a question of our own empowerment to say, can I do it or I cannot do it, or because of commonality with respect to my varieties of equipment in the past, I still now want that imported equipment. And this is exactly the cliche today. The armed forces and the industry keeps fighting, and the ministry enjoys. And I'm serious about it. The ministry actually enjoys this gap. The scenario we today talking about is government today has made it mandatory that if you give me, let's say, a battle tank order, or for that matter, a warship or a submarine order, if you want to buy anything in it, you now have to come to the DAC, take government approval. Now, these are some of those steps. I've been proponent of saying, because strategic defense had to happen in the country, the foreigners decided we'll not give you technology, it happened here. So this is about what, in we sitting in Pune. If you do UPVAS, it is good for you. So somebody forces you now to take approval case by case for a small equipment, which will go in a mega platform. And if you are going to be afraid of taking it to the government, then you will not insist. You'll only say, I want capability of so and so kind. Generically speaking, you define your requirement, and I meet those requirements here. Indigenization happens. As simple as that. And I keep saying, there's no dearth of what can happen, even if capability doesn't exist. Because as a company, when I started long back, 4 decades back, India didn't have any capability to do that design and development. One has to commit to it. If you commit to it, it happens. If you don't have, you have to deep pocket, as Lassen Dobro, obviously, a company is willing to spend, willing to trust the leadership in terms of what they can do. If you decide that you want to do it, there's from the company side, no issue. There are customers who are actually wanting to go that mile ahead, but there are also customers who would say, I want to be import dependent. Then, of course, you can't talk of autonomy. And today, what truly affects us in terms of being a country of the kind of times and the kind of sanctions which can come, I think the 22 sanctions on Russia woke up almost everybody in the world. If one thinks it is not going to happen to me, I've been telling my own people about 6 years back, another 1 decade, you will be denied anything and everything again, because now you will be the next China. And if we are going to be the next China for everybody to say, I will not give you something, the only way we can stand our own feet, and this is exactly where the government today from maturity position says, I need to have 100% control myself. If you want to bring in technology, we're willing to buy it. But then, no export limitations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. The floor is now open for audience questions. Yeah, okay. I think the students have had a fair share. So, yeah, somebody in the yellow shirt. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Not a question, but I'll seek some suggestions and inputs. Patil sir, you mentioned about the capabilities, and I think we share our views on the capabilities. I'll give you 3 examples to the audience also, ranging from critical materials, rare earth, drone, and space tech, so which covers the entire spectrum of the capabilities.
If it's a statement, then we can come it later.
No, the question is, rare earth, it was considered byproduct. Drone was developed in Pune 20 years back, and space tech, few engineers have developed this. So the views is, how can we create that awareness? We already lost on the huge market. Had this been, deployed the application development or the marketing side. So what could be, I mean, can we institutionalize the market approach, the application development, because we've lost a lot of opportunities.
I'll give you a fourth example. Tell me which battle tank was ever designed from first fundamentals in India. Today there is one. And it has been delivered in 18 months. Tell me any example in the world, it can be done in 18 months. So things can be done in India. I'm only trying to add to what you said. Unthinkable things can happen in India with extremely high levels of indigenous content.
Yeah, Brigadier Mahajan, yes.
My question relates to technology for legacy equipment. Today in the armed forces, almost 70 to 80% of the weapons that you have are of a legacy, or in other words, old equipment, which is going to be there for another 15 years, 20 years. All this while, since yesterday, we have been talking about technologies for tomorrow, day after, etc., you know. But the equipment that we're holding now, small arms of the infantry battalion, artillery guns of the artillery, the engineering equipment of the engineer regiment, and so on and so forth. What are we doing to upgrade these so that next 15, 20 years, the majority of your equipment is performing much better than what it is doing today?
Anyone would like to take that one? So it's about legacy equipment. Yeah, Abhijeet, if you have a
Having
thought.
spent a lot of time on the upgrades, I can tell you that it's a question of whether there is a will on the armed forces. You can actually integrate legacy without any issue if you do the software code here. And if it's a legacy available, one good example I'll give you. L-70. The gun doesn't belong to India. We bought the technology for the ordnance factories. Today, the latest weapon systems are based on same L-70. Now, ask me, how did it happen? You didn't use any of the old systems. You use only the armament, and everything else is new with a complete digital bus. Now, if you write a complete digital bus yourself, you're still using the same weapon. In any case, the good old hydraulic system gives you so much trouble to operate, you get rid of it and then you have a modern system. You make a all-electric, put a digital controller inside, you are absolutely today's level of digitalization, and for small values. In India, it happens in 2-3 crores.
I think that's a very good answer. Yes, first chap who's raised his hand, yeah, here, this side, yeah. Middle.
Thank you. My question to the panel is, I think we are still in discussions over AMCA prototyping. How long will it take till the time we develop our own indigenous 6th generation aircraft, given the fact that other countries are already at test stage and pilot stage? Thank you.
Unfortunately, once again, L&T
I can only say one thing. The question is wrongly placed for a very simple reason. Aerospace domain, even today, is 100% in HAL's domain. So I think the answer should only come from HAL or from, let's say, ADA in that sense. ADA has taken a very clear decision. The next aircraft will not happen with HAL. So one step we have crossed. Now, second step, unless we actually embark on, one can't talk of what will happen in future. It's like saying, मैं शादी करूँगा, फिर मेरा बेटा होगा, उसके स्कूल के लिए मैं अभी से क्यों में लगाऊँ?
I think that's, yeah, last person that side, green.
Thank you so much. I'm Amey from MIT WPU. So my question is from design perspective. So we have range of platforms, especially in aircrafts. One is French aircraft. There are Russian aircrafts. The radars are Israel's. Some of the radar equipment is Indian engineers. Do you see the platform integration, especially in the era of network warfare, the integration as a challenge while designing the systems? Are they pose any limitations, or if we have some standard, paradigm or standard operation method to standardize the equipment, especially in the logistics and spare parts? So does it make any difference, policy difference?
Yeah, okay. Aeron, yes.
You know, there are people who are saying that the platform is not what is important, it's the system which is important. The system means the ability to connect multiple assets into a unified weapon machine. And if you are able to connect the different I would say, silos into a system, you are generating a sophisticated weapon system that can do and way above what each individual platform can do. So the integration and the system and the transition towards software is the biggest, in my opinion, challenge which the entire industry is facing. Not only this, it's not only this, but the agile development and the requirement to make adaptation in near real time also caters for high software skills and the deep integration and deep understanding and very short loops between the service and the industry. Without it, it is deemed almost impossible to make the necessary changes in field in the real time. This is what we see in Ukraine. This is what we saw, what we experience in our neighborhood.
Thank you, thank you. A quick response?
Just one add-on point. If the basic design and system architecture you did right in India, then any element, including a complete system, you can import and you can perfectly integrate it, there is no issue. There are hundreds of solved examples. I don't want to take the time on the panel, but can talk a little more.
Yeah.
I just want to add that it's not only a problem of India having different systems from different vendors. It is something that every country nearly, even in Europe, they are now talking about general vehicle architecture, and he spoke about modular open systems architecture. These are things that they are facing now. These are problems that they are currently facing and trying to solve them. So it's not just India.
Yeah, thank you. We just have last question coming here. We'll run out of time after that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Harshad Rathod. My question is to Mr. Jonathan. My question is, how can retired Indian defense personnel contribute to innovation and production of good homegrown defense technologies and companies for India? And how should the government of India support them, according to you, to succeed in contemporary times? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a critical point because this is the true way to integrate the operational needs of the services into the industry. This is the most straightforward way to do that. And the DPM introduced now a 12 months cooling period, which is much reasonable because of life. And I don't see any other more, I would say, comprehensive way to educate the system engineering, to compensate the lacking system engineering knowledge, which, I mean, I don't want to hurt. I mean, I think that one of the key gaps is system engineering which bridges the operational requirement into the specific implementation and design. 1, 2, there needs to be some, the time is up, it's shouting red at me. Another gap is I think that the way RFPs are currently constructed are, for example, I want a warhead of 10 kilograms, okay? Rather than I want to have this and that impact on this and that target. And this is also something which needs to be a change of mind. And that's it, basically.
Thank you, Aeron. Sorry we ran out of time. Even if you didn't get your right answer, doesn't matter. I think I only have a sentence to state, which I picked up from there. Change policy, capacity exists. I think that was well said by Mr. Patil. Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to the panel.
A big round of applause there. Thank you, Major General Nitin. I'm sorry that I called you Major earlier. That was great. I'm so sorry.
I gave it back to you.
Major General Nitin, I apologize. Can I invite our PIC Director, Dinanath Kolkar, to give a small memento to our panelists? Okay, first of all to Major General Nitin. Big round of applause, please. And then to JD Patil. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, do not be. Thank you. I don't even need to finish. To Rajiv Roy Chaudhury, to Jonathan Aeron, and finally to Abhijeet Bokil.
Thank you. Wonderful. I thought the discussion went on very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll just get a photo. And then actually we are going to move on to the final session.